محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Today inshallah ta'ala we will summarize most of the material that we've covered in the last few weeks in the discussion of Tawheed, Al-Istiqama, Tawassul, Shafa'a from the work of Alamat al-Shawkani rahimahullah Dur al-Nadid. But really what we want to cover, and perhaps we're not going to be able to do all of it now, but we'll do most of it, is the overview and the summary of all the modern doubts regarding Tawheed and Shirk. Because the reason why we study the work of Imam Shawkani rahimahullah is just to review much of the knowledge that we've covered and also to add some additional points. But really to get to the heart of the matter, what's really happening nowadays in terms of the revival of the doubts and also the progression, because there are new arguments available in pushing towards grave worship or licensing it or permitting it, weakening the da'wah towards Tawheed al-Ibadah, accusing the Salafis and Salafiyun of being extremists and having an interpretation of the religion which is not traditional or historic, etc. And to begin with some background, we should know that the doubts regarding Tawheed and Shirk, these doubts that surround this topic, they emerged after the time of Salaf. And that's the first thing we have to know. It didn't exist in the time of the Salaf. It emerged afterwards, from as early as you can say the 4th and 5th century up until now. And the reason why we have to begin with that is that you're not going to find any of the Salaf al-Salih, pious predecessors, saying any of the things that these people are saying. And that's the first hujjah to Salaf. If someone were to tell you, for example, Shirk means associating a partner with Allah in lordship, Rububiyyah, we tell them which of the Salaf said that. And you find they will not be able to quote any of them. And this is very important just to understand the timeline. And we also have to know majority of the adherents to this kind of doubts come from the Ash'ari, Maturidi or Sufi methodology. You can say that almost unrestrictedly. Either the Ash'ari fil Aqidah or Maturidi, as we'll see, or they're Sufi, is a tariqah, or those who are with them somewhere. So we have to remember, most people who are that tariq, that manhaj or aqidah, they have a tariqah anyways. And then from them there are as a spectrum. Those who are more strict, from their understanding, those more lenient. But this is the group. So there's the connection then. The pious predecessors were not Salaf al-Salih, were not Sufi. They were not Ash'ari, they were not Maturidi, hence they didn't have these issues. And you have to understand, brothers and sisters, the foundation where it's coming from. Second point, these doubts are not new, but they've been repackaged and some of the argumentation has become more advanced. So we must understand that some of the shubuhat mentioned before existed, but the way that they're being packaged, they're become now more nuanced, more complicated. Partly because of the revival of the Salafi da'wah, particularly at the time of Shaykh Sulayman Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, but even before that time of Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah Ibn Al-Qayyim, because at that time they could say the strength of the aqeed in terms of the argumentation evidences was very clear, but the weakness of the political situation. And then when Shaykh Islam Abdul Wahhab and the Najdi Da'wah arose in the 12th century of our time, right, our Islamic time, 12th, 13th century, 1800s, late 1900s, this da'wah then made the Salafi da'wah prominent. Hence, the dua towards the graves made their arguments more complicated by adhering to and trying to cherry pick quotes from the ulama, from the Najdi Da'wah, isolating quotes from them, or referring to Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah Ibn Al-Qayyim themselves, trying to cherry pick or quote mine them. And some of them have come up with new lines of argumentation, as we'll see later. Currently, the leader of these callers or da'wah is Dr. Hatim Al-Auni, who lives in Mecca, and he is the teacher of all these du'at who speak on this topic, particularly Yasir Qadhi in English. So Yasir Qadhi is particularly, he's a student, and you can go online, you can see that, he openly says that, he praises him, does lectures talking about him, visits him, and etc. So he's the mouthpiece in English for him. So Dr. Yasir Qadhi, nothing new. He's taking it from the source, we have to know. And Hatim Aouni is not the first. Before him, in our time, there was Ali al-Maliki, who was refuted by Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh in this book. And this is the person who preceded Dr. Hatim Aouni. Again, he's from Mecca. So you have to understand that Ali al-Maliki, he's the one who promoted all this. He died. And now Hatim Aouni comes, and he's again, you could say successor in this way, but he's different backgrounds. Why? Because Hatim Aouni has a hadith background, right? Specialist in hadith. But again, when it comes to Tawheed and Aqeedah, we'll see the disasters that he has with him. And he comes from that angle. So he now someone, you could say, more academic in the presentation of the doubts than those that came before. But nothing new, right? And what they'll do is they repackage. So Yasir Qadi, people found out about his doubts from this source. And Yasir Qadi, as we'll see later, what is he saying? Is exactly the same things. And why is he saying it is another question. Fourth point we have to mention, the da'wah of Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah was always opposed by people who were misguided. So we have to know in his time period there were opposers, opponents. And after him there was, and there continues to be. So these people who want to revive this da'wah, this grave worship and this kind of leniency, tawheed and shirk, they appeal to the opponents of Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Abdul Wahhab that many of us are not familiar with, citing their arguments verbatim often, and sometimes using them as sources to one, discredit the da'wah najdiyah, making it look like it's an anomaly, something that's on its own, which is not true, or using the arguments to suggest difference of opinion. Difference of opinion is ikhtilaf. And we will see that the people who are doing this, the real reason why they're doing it is not Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Wahhab or Ibn Taymiyyah. It's none of these two scholars they have a problem with. They have a problem with Salafiyah, period. So why is this important? Because what is da'wah Ahl-Sunnah Jama'ah? Tawheed wa Sunnah. We talk about Tawheed all the time. So if they come from the Tawheed, if we can problematize Tawheed, then we can deal with the entire da'wah. Because they also, the same people have a problem with Sunnah, with Bid'ah, with so many other issues. And the same way they isolate Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Wahhab, they do with Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. They have to find ways to get to the two sources of a lot of the material in the books. So now that we understand that, let us get to the core topics and issues. Where is the debate? Where is the discussion? And if you understand these core issues and the reasons and how they move around with them, you would always understand where things are going. The ulama, they say, in today's time, we can say there's about 4 to 5 major topics where the debate is happening. And each one of these are a question that we need to answer. And what we'll do is we'll present the view of Ahl Sunnah, then the view of Ahl Bid'ah, what they're saying. And this is a summary. What Shawkani rahimahullah was doing in his book is the same thing every alim was doing. Taqreer Aqeedah Ahl Sunnah, established Aqeedah Ahl Sunnah, warad ala Ahl Bid'ah, and then refuting Ahl Bid'ah. So we have to understand these issues. Dr. Salih Sindi, Sheikh Salih Sindi, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he mentioned these top 5 questions. If a student of knowledge wants to become strong in Tawheed and Aqeedah, especially Tawheed and topic of Shirk, they have to know these 5 topics. Because this is where the whole debate is. So the first one, what is the Tawheed that the Prophet ﷺ came to explain to the Ummah? That's the first question. What is the Tawheed that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sent to explain to the Ummah? Which Tawheed is it? So that's the first question, the first mabhath, the discussion, investigation. What is this Tawheed? Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we say that Tawheed is 3 categories. And the main da'wah of all the Anbiya wa Rusul was Tawheed al-Ibadah or Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, the Tawheed of Allah's worship. They came with all 3 of them. They confirmed all categories of Tawheed. But the fundamental part of da'wah, what was it? To teach the people to give Allah His sole right to worship. Because we know Quraysh, they believed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala existed. They knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the right to lordship, that He's the only creator, sustainer, provider. But they didn't go the next step of affirming the worship. Likewise, they knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sifatul kamal, although they didn't perfect either of these 2. Side benefit, the Quraysh didn't perfect Tawheed Rubiyyah wala asma sifat. They didn't perfect it, but they had it. They made taqreer of it, they affirmed it. But the problem was, they didn't do the Tawheed al-Ibadah. So Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah would say that, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. Many ayat, all the evidence of Quran tell us this. That every messenger, prophet messenger was sent to these people saying, worship Allah and don't associate partners with Him. Stay away from the false deities. طيب. Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah, we say Tawheed is 3 categories. You have to know this because there's a difference between us and them from this angle. Tawheed is 3 categories. Tawheed of Allah's Lordship, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed of worship, Tawheed al-Ibadah or Uluhiyyah. Both names are correct and have different angles of it, but they're both the same meaning. And Tawheed of Allah's names and attributes, Asma'illahi wa Sifatih. And we also believe Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah that all three of them have a connection to one another. And we studied this before, but just to remind us, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed of Lordship, necessitates Tawheed of worship. And the Tawheed of Allah's attributes necessitates Tawheed of worship. And Tawheed of worship includes Tawheed of Lordship and worship and names and attributes. So either they necessitate or they include one another. So all three of them are either connected to each other. How? By including one another or necessitating. One will lead to another. طيب. So that's our aqeedah, but the da'wah anbiya rusul, Tawheed al-Ibadah. Ahlul Bid'ah, all of them from these different groups I mentioned, they say the Tawheed that the prophets and messengers were sent with was Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. That's it. Tawheed of Lordship. This is what they believe. That the Tawheed of all the prophets and messengers were sent to teach the people Allah is one. That He exists. And so therefore, Ahlul Bid'ah, whether they be Ash'ari, Maturidi, Braylevi, Diobandi, you name it, they're all in the same group. They say, awwal wajib, the first wajib of someone is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through logical and infinite evidences, to know Him and affirm Him. And they also say that the shirk cannot occur in the ummah because Muslims believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one because they believe in His Lordship. You see how big a problem that is? Because the Tawheed is misdefined. So they don't believe in all the categories of Tawheed. They have also three categories of Tawheed, but all their categories are Rububiyyah. Okay, so they say they just divide in three ways. It's all the same category. طيب. So far we see a huge difference in our understanding of Tawheed, and we're going to see the biggest problem regarding these topics is ta'arifat, definitions. Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah, once we have confirmed that Tawheed is three categories, and the da'wah anbiya wa rusul was Tawheed al-Ibadah, and they came to confirm and to remind the people of the other types of Tawheed, and also to perfect it. The question that arose amongst the people, what's the proof for the Tawheed al-Ibadah is three categories? And the ulama, they say that if you look in the Quran and Sunnah, and you do complete induction of all the evidences, we find that Tawheed is three categories, and they're distinct categories. طيب. So that's the first point. The Tawheed Anbiya wa Rusul, they came with all three categories of Tawheed, but the emphasis was on Tawheed al-Ibadah, worship, because the Quraysh and all the Ummah before, that was the problem that they had. And why the Prophet's message didn't come to teach people Tawheed al-Rububiyyah? As Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah says, is Amr Fitri. We're already born confirming that. Most of mankind across the world already believe that, as we studied in the atheism class. So it's not a conversation. The conversation is you go from confirming that to the next step. طيب, the second question. What are the differences between Tawheed al-Rububiyyah and Uluhiyyah? Ahlul Bid'ah, they don't believe in the Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah being different than Rububiyyah. So they say Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. It's very problematic because the name is different, right? So they're going to say Rububiyyah is Uluhiyyah. We're going to say Kayf, the name is different. So the ulama, they said, what are the differences? And they listed 6 differences between Tawheed al-Rububiyyah and Uluhiyyah. 6. We don't have time to go through all of them, but one of them, the linguistic abbreviation, the names. One comes from Rabb and one comes from Ilah. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah to do with Allah's Lordship. The other one has to do with worship. What else is different? Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, what is it? Tawheed Allah fi af'alihi, to sing out Allah in His actions. Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah is what? To sing out Allah in your actions towards Him. So even the objective is different. And they keep going. The reason I'm saying this, Ahlul Bid'ah, they all agree, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, if you have it, you have come with Uluhiyyah, because Tawheed is only 3 categories, all Rububiyyah for them. There's no difference there. Now that doesn't mean that they tell people to do shirk and stuff like this. They're not going to say that. But their understanding is, if you have Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, you're a Muslim. You're a Muslim. And you're not going to leave Islam, as we're going to see, until you fall into shirk in Rububiyyah. So see, this is very important. This is the foundation which the whole debate is going back to. Third question, what is ibadah? This is the main issue. In fact, you may say this is the ras, this is the issue, the origin, the sabab al-khilaf goes back to this. As Shaykh al-Muallimi, rahimahullah, in his kitab Raf' al-Ishtibah, He says in the Muqaddimah, I looked at all the discussions and debates between Ahl Bid'ah and Ahl Sunnah regarding the topic of ibadah or topic of Tawheed and Shirk, and I found that the fundamental problem is the issue of definition of ibadah. So Jazakallah khair al-Shaykh rahimahullah rahmatu wasi'ah, that he found for us the biggest problem is there. What is ibadah? As we're going to see, if you don't know what ibadah is, you will never be able to say shirk, not shirk. So he said, I looked carefully, I thought about it deeply, and I found that's it. So the whole book is about trying to explain it. So what is this issue of ibadah? It sounds simple to us, but it's not, because unfortunately, this is what Hatim Aouni, Yasir Qadi, anyone you name, that's what they're going to do. They're going to confuse the people here. So Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we say dua is the essence of worship. Dua huwa al-ibadah. Dua is worship, al-hadith. And dua is two categories, you said. In fact, you may say the entire deen goes back to ibadah, worship of invocation. And it's the essence of worship. Imma dua al-mas'ala or dua al-ibadah. The entire, every ibadah you can think of, act of worship that we do, our whole lives, are going back dua al-mas'ala, dua of invocation, and dua al-ibadah, dua of worship. So anything that we think about ibadah, asl of our worship goes back to concept of invocation, asking Allah. So why am I saying this? Because Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah, then when we define ibadah, they give two definitions. And as a side point, some ulama differ in how to define ibadah, but they only differ in which wordings they're using, not the intended meaning. Okay, so it's another thing. If you look at the definition, you find different wordings, but they're all saying the same things, just different words. Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah Majmu' Fatawa, he defines ibadah, what it is itself, and what it is, how you do it. What it is an incomprehensive term that encompasses the ultimate love, right? The perfection, ultimate love of Allah, and ultimate love, perfection and submission to Allah. So it's a term that indicates that somebody is going to have in it combining between absolute and ultimate love of Allah and ultimate or absolute perfect love and submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so obviously some ulama, they had different ways of putting it together, but they revolve around those words. Mahabba, kamil, or ghayat mahabba, ghayat khudu' tadallul, these different words. And worship itself, when it's an action or a statement or a word, now he says, what is it? A comprehensive term telling us everything Allah loves and is pleased with. Of statement and action, outward, inward. That's what the acts of worship. So everything Allah loves and is pleased with, of internal or external words and deeds. So if something is worship, it's going to be something Allah loves and is pleased with. It's going to be a word or statement. So a word in the tongue, statement of the tongue, a heart, action of the heart, action of the limb. It's going to be something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with and loves. And this action is going to be encompassing in it, indicating perfect and absolute love and absolute submission. And the purpose of it is ta'zeemullah, to venerate Allah the way He deserves to be venerated. So again, this is our understanding of ibadah. Now again, like I said, the ulama have slight difference to how they define it, but they all revolve around that concept. طيب, Ahl Bid'ah, they define ibadah as going back to the aqeedah, the belief of a person in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rububiyyah, lordship. That person believes in his heart only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the qualities of lordship. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves worship. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is absolutely perfect. All those, only Allah has the absolute right to action. So anything that to do with the aqeedah rububiyyah, that's ibadah. And how do we know this? When you look at their statements, again, the Ahl Bid'ah, those who promote these things, those who refute to try to respond to Shaykh Islam ibn Wahhab, that's it. They said that only something's ibadah, or something is considered deity in which you worshipped, when you've taken that thing either to have the qualities of lordship, or you believe that that item or object deserves worship, or that itself is entitled to it. So again, their understanding of ibadah, ilah, goes back to rububiyyah. You can see example Dahlan in his book Turra Sunniyya fi Rad' ala Wahhabiyya. He puts page 34, he has this definition. So they misdefined the ibadah because they misdefined Tawheed. And then next question, number 4. What is shirk? And as you probably can guess, Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah, we say shirk is the opposite of Tawheed. Whenever you give anything that's specific to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of lordship, worship, and beautiful names and attributes to other than Allah, says shirk. This is shirk. So if Tawheed is 3 categories, Ahl-Sunnah Jama'ah say shirk is 3 categories. Of course, you can categorize shirk in different ways, but this is 3 and 3, you can say this. So anything that's unique and specific to Allah has to be given to Allah of lordship, worship, and beautiful names and attributes. Ahlul Bid'ah, they say shirk is only in Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. How? When this person gives the qualities, the khasa'is al-Rububiyyah, special qualities of Allah, to other than Allah, or believes in a second God, or believes someone else deserves worship, etc. Anything to Rububiyyah. So for example, their understanding Tawheed is Allah is one. La qasima lahu. He has no divisions. So if you say it's 2 gods, you're mushrik. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wahidu fi af'alihi. Allah is one in His actions. So if you say there's another cause besides Allah, anta mushrik. Right? It's funny because some of the stuff they say we don't disagree, but some of the stuff we can't find any proof for that. Right? Some of the categorization understandings. But why am I saying this? The whole thing goes back there. So Tawheed, they misdefined it. Shirk, misdefined it. Ibadah, misdefined it. Collapsed all of Tawheed to Rububiyyah. All of it. Brothers and sisters, hence, when Ahl-Sunnah Jama'ah, specifically Shaykh Islam al-Duhab, when he declared certain acts of worship as being shirk when given to other than Allah, Ahl-Sunnah will say that if you give worship to Allah, you commit shirk fil ibadah. They, Ahlul Bid'ah, say this cannot be in and of itself. It can only be when you have the beliefs. So, مثلا, somebody seeks the help of the dead. Al-Istiqama li ghayrillah. We're going to say this is shirk because you're seeking the help from the dead. You violated the conditions. They will say, fi nafsihi cannot be shirk illa, except with the aqidah that you believe that the one you're asking is like Allah, or has the qualities of Allah, or deserves worship like Allah. So only ma'al aqidah, only ma'al aqidah. Otherwise, what they're saying is the amal itself cannot indicate absolute love and perfection and submission and veneration. It has to come with aqidah. Ahl-Sunnah Jama'ah was saying that certain acts of worship are different categories, but we know giving worship to Allah that only belongs to Allah, فهو shirk. So now, once they didn't accept this, it became a big issue. They didn't accept that Muslims are falling into shirk because according to their definition, you can't. Unless you believe in another God or you have to believe that someone has the qualities besides Allah. So what did they do then? They called Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Wahhab and the ulama Najdiyah as Wahhabis or Khawarij. And before that, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, the same thing. So you see, because they said, how can they declare the Ummah as kafir? They must be Khawarij. So they made now the similarity between them. We'll see it's a false similarity. So where is the real discussion? It's boiling down, brothers and sisters, to what? We're boiling down to some fundamentals, definitions. What is Tawheed? What's Ibadah? What's Shirk? When does a Muslim stay a Muslim? When does he get out of Islam? Kufr wa takfir wa ridda. That conversation came up then. Number 3, is the Ummah possible falling into Shirk? Ahlul Bid'ah say abadan. Nabi Sallallahu told us our Ummah's Ummah, which is marhuma, is a merciful Ummah. We're safe from Shirk. And how about the authentic hadith say that people are going to revive Shirk? They say that's not possible because, what's their belief again? Is any Muslim believe in 2 gods? Does anyone believe in another Lord besides Allah? Ailahum ma'allah abadan. Khalas. And we're saying Nabi Sallallahu said people are going to go around the idols. No, see? So when they come and say, look at them, they accuse the Ummah falling to Shirk. And it's very interesting because when you go back to history, it's not like the shirk Shaykh Islam was fighting was only to shirk fi uluhiyyah. In time of Shaykh Islam Duha, people didn't believe, some tribes didn't believe in the resurrection. Everyone said that's shirk and kufr. But see, the issue we're talking about here is that the main issue is shirk. What is it? Now, number 5, the last major question. What was the situation of polytheists at the time of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? What was the hal? What was the condition of Quraysh? What was their condition? What were they doing wrong? So you can see now where Ahl Bid'ah are going to answer. Ahl Sunnah will say that the shirk and the problem of Quraysh was in Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, worship, not Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, as Allah clearly said in the Quran that they confirmed Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Not they perfected it, okay? Not that they had perfection, but just they didn't deny it. But they had a problem with the logical necessity. فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا, don't make for Allah partners in worship. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, you know He's only one. That's one of the clearest proofs. Very important ayah. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, what do you know? You know Allah is one. فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا فِي طَاعَتِهِ وَعِبَادَتِهِ. Ahl-Bid'ah, they say that the Quraysh fell into shirk of rububiyyah, because Tawheed is rububiyyah. So what they do then? They interpret all the stories in the Quran, all the statements of Quraysh, all the prophets before as falling into, the people falling into Tawheed, shirk of rububiyyah. Ibrahim's story, what was the problem? Say, look, it was rububiyyah. No. It was also, they're worshipping idols, they're worshipping them. Not just that they believed. So what's important? They try to interpret everything this way. No. Go to the stories and see what they're doing. Everyone was atheist. Everyone was atheist. Now, brothers and sisters, think of Quraysh. When Quraysh say that if you ask them, they say, no, they were lying. Some of them say that. They were lying. Allah said, Allah said, they said that. And you say, Allah, they're lying? No, they're going to say, no, what Allah really meant was, إِذْ نُسَوِّيكُمْ بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. When we made Allah equal. Okay, we tell them نُسَوِّيكُم, what does that mean? Tabari says, فِي الْعِبَادَةِ. See, no, there's no salaf عندهم ولا واحد. You will never find them. Ask them, bring me Razi even. Razi says the same thing. It's ibadah. That's the funny part. We're going to see how the bid'ah, they do this. When they look, they scrape the internet, they go on all the books, find anybody. Well, tell them, why are you running from the big sheikhs you have? Bring me the biggest. Imam Mufassirin, Tabari, no, let's go Razi. Razi not with them, okay, let's jump over here. They get anybody. And it's very interesting, brothers and sisters. When we look carefully at this, we see if Quraysh was committing shirk for rububiyyah, why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was spending so much time then in Tawheed al-Ibad? Makes no sense, right? Even the seerah becomes complicated now. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam saying, قُولُوا لَا إِلَهِ إِلَّا تُفْلِحُوا. They're gonna, if that was the state, they would have accepted him immediately. What was the problem? Or how about, for example, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said Mu'adh bin Jabal. That's a very important hadith we love, Ahl Sunnah, we use it all the time. When you ask Ahl Bid'ah, they have no sense of the hadith. Mu'adh goes to the people of the book, Jews and Christians, first thing he does is brings them to, they believe in Tawheed of Allah. And then what? If they accept it, right, but the Jews, they don't believe in Allah's one. Right, they don't they have, they believe that, right? Christians don't believe Allah exists. And then what's more problematic? The problem said, if they accept and they know Allah, then go to Salah. Kaif? How did they learn about Him? They didn't do no logic. Everything's problematic. This hadith, they have no answer. They actually skip over the hadith. They never cite the hadith because the hadith goes against them. What was the Prophet ﷺ telling them? Go to them, tell them Allah deserves worship, and correct their understanding of Aqidah too. They make mistakes in the Aqidah, yes, but they're pushing them what? What was the Prophet's conversation with Adi ibn Hatim? A Christian revert, right? Reverted to Islam. Nabi spoke to Adi. What was he telling him? Take off that weapon, that idol off your neck, the cross. And he told him about the ibadah of the Jews and Christians to the rabbis. Ibadah, I thought it was about rububiyyah. You see, anytime you look at, so those hadith, no, you put those aside. So what will they do? Just find out, and that's another problem, brothers and sisters. Ahl Bid'ah, they never bring evidence that they're going to be for them. Always what's for them and what's against them, as if it doesn't exist. So therefore, summary of this point, they say the whole conversation is rububiyyah. And we're going to say then we have a serious problem. That's the da'wah of the Anbiya wa Rusul, because that's against the Quran, it's against the Sunnah, against the Salaf, it's against everything. Now we turn to the topic that Shawkani was discussing in the book, which is the details now. Now we got the 5 topics. Now we know the core issues. Let's go to some of the tafasir, some of the details. And we will do this part, and next week we'll maybe have to continue, because we have to finish just a survey of everything. This is an overview, just highlighting different things for us. Now that we understand where the discussions are, let's go to ibadah. So the discussion of Tawheed and Shirk now revolves around what is ibadah. So Imam Shawkani's book, he was asked those questions. Durr Nadid, what was the questions? Anyone remembers? The Sa'id, he asked Shawkani some questions he's interested in. What were the topics? And the first one is Al-Istiqama, Tawassul. What else? Come on guys, everyone forgot. Shafa'a, intercession. Right, these are the 2 questions you're confused about. And then going to the graves and certain permissible, not permissible ziyarah. That's the questions. Why are these questions important? Those are the questions at the time of Shawkani, time of Ibn Taymiyyah, time of Ibn Qayyim, time of Muhammad Wahhab, all the time. After the doubts came, those were the conversations. But that doesn't mean that the whole topic's around that. But why are these topics so important? Let's get to this. The reason why these topics are important, number 1, al-istighatha, seeking Allah's help in time of distress. Al-shafa'a, seeking intercession. At-tawassul, seeking nearness and means to Allah. These are 3 major topics till today. Why? All of these topics are dua al-mas'ala. Dua al-mas'ala, the dua of asking. Pay attention, but this is a very important point. They always debate these because this gives them the madkhal. It's the door in. Did you ever hear someone say you can make salat to somebody else besides Allah? Could any Muslim accept that? You can pray salat dhuhr to a dead? No, that's too much. How about dua mas'ala? Fi madkhal, we have a way out. Dua mas'ala, brothers and sisters, sometimes it's ibadah and sometimes it's not. Pay attention, this is where the debate is. They go to dua mas'ala and then they confuse it with dua al-ibadah so they can make the whole thing look like there's asl. Or otherwise you tell them dua mas'ala with dua al-ibadah, you say it's not shirk aslan. What do you care about dua mas'ala wal ibadah? It's all the same to you. If someone prayed dhuhr to other than Allah, it's not shirk عندهم unless he has the aqidah. But that's too open, right? That's too much. You can't tell someone pray dhuhr to the dead. No, but ask him for shafa'ah. This shafa'ah has asl, right? So dua mas'ala, brothers, everything dua mas'ala. Hence, Imam Shawkani taught us the principle, so we have to memorize it. Dua mas'ala, what's the principle for all three of them? So dua mas'ala is considered al-istighatha, wal-isti'ana, والاستعاذة والشفاعة والتوسل. All five of them are mas'ala. Okay, so I'm going to repeat all of them. Dua al-istighatha, seeking the help in time of distress. Al-istighatha. Number 2, al-isti'ana, seeking help generally. So seeking help at time of distress, al-istighatha. Number 2, al-isti'ana, seeking help generally. Number 3, al-isti'adha, seeking refuge. Again, this is all I'm talking all of this towards the creation and towards Allah. This is the topic. The fourth one, ash-shafa'a, seeking intercession. And number 5, at-tawassul. All five of them are dua mas'ala. Okay, with me everybody? All of them have one qa'idah they all share, which is you can only ask the creation for these five if they are living, present, capable. And when we say capable, fi jins al-bashar or jins al-makhluq, all five have the same qa'idah. Hayyun, hadir, qadir. All five of them. Hayyun, hadir, qadir. Alive, present, capable. When we say capable, fi jins al-makhluq, the human beings can do, creation can do it. So the good news, dua mas'ala, five of them, one principle. Okay? Hayyun, hadir, qadir. Present, alive, and capable. And if you ask the creation without these conditions, and specifically that which they're not able to do, then it's shirk akbar. Shirk akbar. طيب. Now that we know this, Ahl Bid'ah, they know they can't talk about dua al-ibadah. So what they're going to do, they're going to fall into some fallacies and contradictions. They have to find a way with this. That's why you see the beginning of Shawkani's book, he was talking about dua bid'i with dua shirk, which means istighatha. It's all over, it's all mixed kind of. They do this on purpose. It's almost like when you talk to them, they retreat here, he retreats there. It's like you have no idea what he's trying to say. And the reason I'm saying that, the first thing they do, the fallacy of equivocation. One word, many meanings. It's called a fallacy of equivocation. Any word that has more than one meaning, that's the goal for the Ahl Bid'ah. And what do we say? What is it called? Something's mutashabih. It's not mutashabih, but عندهم they like mutashabihat. That's the principle. Anyone who's Ahl Bid'ah in the history of mankind, Yawm al-Qiyamah, will be hiding behind mutashabihat. But you can be a kafir or Muslim. I'm just saying now, Christian, Jew, Muslim, you name it. Always mutashabihat. We never have muhkam, ever. The reason I'm saying that is because asking about what's muhkam. Are we allowed to do an ibadah, mahdah, to Allah? He'd be like, no, how about slaughter? Slaughter is, they always go to these ones. I'm going to show you something. There's a rule. Dua mas'ala has a sharia way, means a ibadah way, and a permissible way, correct? So why is this useful? Now they can play it both. When you ask them, can you do istighatha to the creation? They say, absolutely. Istighatha is permissible to the creation. You don't believe in istighatha? And you're like, this I do with conditions. So what's wrong? You're violating the conditions. He'll be like, no, I don't agree with your conditions. See, this is a problem. So what else they'll do? Fallacy of equivocation, they'll say, al-istighatha is tawassul. Tawassul is shafa'a. Shafa'a is permissible. Remember Ibn Taymiyyah said this? Every time they talk about tawassul, they talk about istighatha. And istighatha, they call it tawassul. So you see the point? And then there's a mushtarak, a combination between shafa'a and tawassul. Let me show you an example. If you ask someone now to make dua for you, and the person is living, able and capable, right, present, this is called tawassul to a person who's alive, right? This is allowed. If I do shafa'ah in the dunya, by asking you to go ask your employer to help me with a job, this is called shafa'ah fi dunya. Shafa'ah fi dunya and tawassul, they have a shared point. See? Why is it important? Shafa'ah, tawassul, istighatha, they're all the same. So only the Wahhabis say otherwise. That's what they're going to say. So that's the first one, the fallacy of equivocation. Be careful of that. You have to tell them what does the tawassul mean, what does istighatha mean, what does shafa'ah mean. Number two, the categorical fallacy. They mix up categories. So they confuse dua al-mas'ala with dua al-ibadah. Very, very important. This is even more important. All the shubahat you can see today, they will use this. So dua al-mas'ala, we said, were those five, and you have the condition. Dua al-ibadah, or any act of worship the Sharia has taught us. Okay? And dua al-ibadah, the ulama say, is categories. But the most powerful and open one is called al-ibadah al-mahdah, pure, unconditional worship. So like salah. Is there two ways to pray salah? Fard and nafil? No, I'm talking about for humans and non-humans. Is there such thing, guys? No. So it's a pure worship. You will never hear a conversation about that. It's always dua mas'ala. So they will confuse dua mas'ala with dua al-ibadah. But then when they go to the graves, they do dua al-ibadah, not dua mas'ala. You see, they go to the graves and they're doing sujood, ruku'. Then they start doing other things, dabah wa nadar, and sadaqah. They're mixing all of them. So when you ask, what are you doing? He's going to jump to the one that's permissible. I'm just doing tawassul. No, this is istighatha. And they'll be like, no. And then someone will say the sujood has more than one meaning. Sujood tahiyyah wa sujood al-ibadah. So that's another one now. Dua, which is mushtaraka, and ibadah, which is mahadda, they mixed them. The reason I'm saying this, take a look at all the conversation we did so far. Was any discussion about giving zakat to the dead? No one's talking about it, even though they do that. They're talking about asking. So that's a categorical fallacy when they mix the dua mas'ala as if it's dua and ibadah. And we go now to the Quraysh. What was Quraysh doing? Chapter 39, Surah Zumar, Ayah 3. Ma na'buduhum. We don't worship them. What kind of ibadah they're doing here? Dua al-ibadah. They were doing worship. إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَ اللَّهِ زُلْفَى. To get closer to Allah, to them, to get Allah. So they're doing dua al-ibadah. When you pull them up on this, that you guys are doing dua al-ibadah, they're going to run to dua al-mas'ala. Then you're going to say you're violating the conditions. Then he's going to say it's tawassul. Then he's going to move around like that. So it's very important you understand what's happening here. They're never going to catch them clear cut. And the reason why this is sad is because if you ask the most difference between Quraysh and you, then they'll get angry and say, we believe in Tawheed Rububiyyah. They don't. And we tell them, you sure? And then they're going to say, Quraysh had problems with Tawheed Rububiyyah. And we said, we agree, they had naqs, but they had the asl. You see, well, this is moving also the goalposts, another fallacy. We didn't say they didn't have perfection. I said asl. He's going to say, how dare you make a qiyas with us? We tell him, how dare you make qiyas bayna khaliq al-makhluq? Shame on you. You're giving the ibad to Allah. You're talking about the Rabb and not Rabb. So they do the same. They fall into one angle, qiyas ma'a fariq, then they use the dilid qiyas ma'a fariq. That's a contradiction. Next one, they also do something else, and we will finish with this, which is that they confuse tawassul al-shirki, which is al-istighatha li ghayrillah, with the tawassul bid'i. Categorical fallacy. Tawassul bid'i is, what is it? Anyone can remind us? What's the innovative version of tawassul? Yes. Good. You're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his status as a creation or through his essence. So you're asking Allah but in the wrong way. When you're asking other than Allah directly, that's called tawassul shirki istighatha li ghayrillah. فيما لا يقدر عليه إلا الله. خلاص. So what's important? When you say tawassul, is it allowed or not? Ahlul Sunnah say tawassul is permissible. How many categories? We say 3. Tawassul mashru', a shar'i one, a bid'i one, a shirki one. What they will do? They'll debate you on the bid'i one, even though he's doing the shirki one. Look, subki, all the big imams, that's what they do. Who said you're not allowed to do tawassul bidat? Who's talking about that? You do tawassul other than Allah directly, you do istighatha. So he's talking about istighatha, but he knows he can't argue with you on that. So he's going to move the conversation. The beginning of Shawkani's book, that was debate. Till today, remember Al-Albani's book, if you see it, read it in English. What was he debating there? All forms. But the big conversation usually is in the bid'i one. That's not the only problem that they have. In fact, and this is the next one, knowing that there's some debate about which version tawassul is bid'ah and which is shar'i, they will invoke ulama al-sunnah jama'ah into the conversation to catch you off guard. Example, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah is with us on this. He says making dua through the dead to ask Allah is bid'ah, not shirki. So what are you upon? You're upon misguidance. And this is the new version. This is Hatim Aouni's addition to the conversation. He's brought Ibn Taymiyyah, and somewhere Ibn Taymiyyah wasn't before it. Now he's not position-wise. To make him an opponent against Ibn Abdul Wahhab. And Yasir Qadi, that's exactly what he does. I said, they're going to say Ibn Taymiyyah was different from Abdul Wahhab. How? Ibn Taymiyyah called it bid'ah, he called it shirk. As if Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah's words cannot be interpreted both ways. As if other ulama didn't have the same view as Ibn Taymiyyah or otherwise. So brothers and sisters, you must understand what they're doing. Tawassul bid'i is wrong. But tawassul istighatha, Shaykh Islam fought. But they'll bring Ibn Taymiyyah here and not here. Why? Because Ibn Taymiyyah, we're going to use him when we need him. Because you have a problem with Shaykh Islam Wahhab. He's extremist. He's a Khariji. Ibn Taymiyyah, they dare to say that. But they'll just say, he was fair. And I don't have time, but next week I'm going to read Yasir Qadi's new book, right? This book he published, he's making money. You just read what he writes. And then we have his other book here, whatever he wrote here. All right, his Sharh of Kashf Shubuhat. We're going to read from this one too. And we're going to see which one is correct, which Yasir Qadi is correct. Was he ignorant before or now? He's going to tell us, because he has words in there. But the brothers and sisters, we have to know, this discussion today is new because Ibn Taymiyyah was now brought into conversation. Before, many Salafis didn't know that he had that wording or what does it mean. Worse than this, they'll invoke ulama we like, Ibn Uthaymeen, Bakr Abu Zayd, so. How about all these ulama there? And then you and I are confused now. What's going on here? I thought I knew this. Tawassul bid'ah is different, tawassul shirki. Don't let the person confuse you what he's talking about here. And that doesn't mean that just because it's debate in tawassul bid'ah, that all the ulama have the same view. If they differ on bid'ah, that's different conversation and difference on tawassul shirki, istighatha li ghayrillah. Remember, Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah died in jail because they jailed him for the same views. Don't let them call his name now. Right? Just remember that. I'm going to finish with this point. He went to die in jail for the fatwa of what? Visiting the graves. Visiting what grave? Rasul's grave for the intention of visiting. The Taymiyyah said not allowed. They put him in jail for that. He died in jail. But today they'll come and say, Ibn Taymiyyah said. Like, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Allahu musta'an. How is that correct? And who is doing this? People who know exactly what they're doing. They're plotting and planning. Next week, inshallah ta'ala, we'll finish what's remaining. Then we'll get into the conversation, the last part, which has to do with the discussion of extremism and the views of Shaykh Islam ibn Wahhab in light of his real aqeedah and whether his aqeedah was unique to him or is it the way of the Khawarij. Because this is the accusation that Yasir Qadi and others are saying, that Shaykh Islam ibn Wahhab is a Khariji. And we're going to find out difference between Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah and the Khawarij في مسألة التكفير. من مسألة التكفير. If anyone has any quick questions, otherwise I think it's Salah time. Maybe one question, inshallah. Yes, Sheikh. So it's not important, necessary, or maybe even the best idea for everyone to respond to the doubts. Because sometimes you find online some of the way the people are responding is not effective. They didn't get to the bottom of the problem, what's happening. And you may even notice that some of the responses that are giving, they open the door to more doubts. So an example, like some of the doubts Yasir Qadi, others promoted, when responded to, then he gave him the opportunity to bring more. And he has a rule, he doesn't respond to anyone back and forth. So therefore, Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah should be wiser. The du'at should just someone who's capable respond, and everyone just refer to that. Alhamdulillah, it's available. But the ulama are responding now in terms of different books and writing these different works to summarize and make easier what's available. For the English speakers, we just need to collect that in one place where it comes reference. But we should know, though, everyone should know what is the doubts, what is going on. That does not allow for us to be ignorant of the basics of the conversation. Like I said today, what is shafa'ah, what is tawassul, what is istighatha? If we don't know, then we're also prone to doubts. Because before social media and YouTube, you may say many people didn't know. In fact, if you refer someone to the work of Shaykh Al-Albani fi tawassul, it was often enough. But now we're finding that people have not even read that book or don't know about it. And then now there's again, I don't have time to say it, but the 40-something minute response by Yasir Qadi bring all these doubts in one video with thousands of people watching it, liking it, sharing it. So now it's a must that we also be at least aware of what is the doubts and how to respond in general as something to resort to for more detail. Inshallah, next week we will continue from there. Subhanaka bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.